all that being said, all that being considered, the first thing that I do want to go ahead and do, and this is going to help set up an argument that I'm going to make later on in a future segment. I won't say which segment. Don't want to do too much in terms of spoilers necessarily. I want to show you guys the most recent power ratings from the Any Given Saturday power rating model. Now, I'll say 2 to 3 disclaimers of this power rating model. First and foremost, what this power rating model represents, it is not how I would go about ranking these teams if I was, say, a college football playoff committee member, or if I was someone that, had a vote in the AP poll. That's not how I would go about ranking these teams whatsoever. Instead, what I look at is who would be favored over whom on a neutral site field. That's really what answers the question in terms of what these top 25 power ratings do end up answering. So keep that in mind when you're about to see this top 25 in the pre-bowl edition of these power ratings. And another thing that I do want to go ahead and point out as well, before I do go ahead and dive into these power ratings and show you this top 25, I'm not someone that makes manual adjustments, right? Whatever the model gives me, that's what the top 25 is. I don't make a manual adjustment for if there is a major injury or if there is players that are opting out of bowl games because they are going into the transfer portal that is starting to heat up. And we'll talk about some key transfer portal signings in later podcasts. We're just not going to do that here today. And in addition, we're also talking about, well, what if they opt out because they want to try for the NFL draft, if they're opting out to prepare for their future NFL careers? So, and the reason why I do that is if I manually adjust it because of a handful of key players on a team, I would have to do that for all 133 teams in the FBS. And frankly, I really don't want to do that. And I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from in that regard. So, that being said, we'll go ahead and dive right into it. There wasn't a lot of significant movement in this top 25, considering, well, there was only 20 teams out of 130 plus that ended up playing this past weekend. But even with that being considered, what we had a couple of new teams enter, a couple of teams did leave. Let's go ahead and start working our way from the bottom and working our way up. We're going to start from the bottom like Drake. We're going to show you that 21 through 25 first. We do have a couple of newcomers from the group of 5 ranks. Iowa was dominated by Michigan in the Big Ten Championship, and Louisville could not find a way to beat Florida State in spite of Florida State trotting out their 3rd-string quarterback, who is not expected to play at all this season, a true freshman, might I add. So Louisville and Iowa are both no longer in this top 25. But what takes their place is 2 group of 5 teams as well. At number 24, we'll harp in on number 24 specifically for right now. So Boise State, they are the number 24 ranked team in the nation in these power ratings. And I'm sure you'll be a little bit surprised by that because of the fact that Boise State is an 8-5 team. So maybe quite a few teams out there, people out there would not consider Boise State as even a top 5 group of 5 team. But what I will say is that Boise State finished the season extremely strong, and it's an extremely resilient group, which I'll dive into that later on. First and foremost, yes, it was rough to see this team play some football early on. They had a very difficult non-conference date that featured multiple Power 5 opponents, Washington and UCF. They did lose both. They also lose to a good Memphis team as well before finally picking up an FCS win against North Dakota. But in the second half of the season, Boise State really did turn it on. And I think it is one of the well-balanced leagues in the entire FBS. The Mountain West was a very good conference this season, at least from a depth perspective, from a group of five standard. So I think that's very important to note as I see what they did in the last 6 to 7 games. Boise State was winners of 5 of their last 6 games. They are rolling on all cylinders. This is a team that could make a big step here in 2024, but they are champions of the Mountain West. They beat UNLV. We'll talk about that later tonight because that was something that did surprise me a little bit, seeing as they were on the road for that. But Boise State is the number 24 team in the entire country. And then we have the Troy Trojans that are in here as well. Troy comes in at number 22. This is also the very first time all season long that we do have the Troy Trojans ranked in this top 25 of the Any Given Saturday power rating model, and it's much deserved. Slow start for the Troy Trojans, I would say. A team that might have been written off in the overall national conversation after their first notable game of the season against Kansas State. They were blown out. They lost by nearly 30 points to what turned out to be a very good Kansas State team. But after they took their early struggles, their early adversaries, they rack out a 9-game winning streak to end the year. And that 9-game winning streak also I can't count. They actually won 10 games in a row. This team is the epitome of carrying momentum into the postseason, and that is captured by a Sun Belt championship, which we'll also spend some time talking about later on tonight as well. Troy is going to finish the regular season plus conference championship weekend 11-2. They could get to a 12-win team in the Birmingham Bowl, even if they may not have their head coach allegedly, because he might be rumored to go to Tulane. There might be more on that hasn't been confirmed as of when I'm recording this. This is recorded like 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday, and this is also on the East Coast as well. But we do have Troy as the number 22 team in the country, and rounding out this group, we got NC State at 21. Then we do have our top 20, and really no change here because all of these teams in the top 20, they were all on buys. Well, not all of them. The only notable exception here is SMU. SMU did play Tulane, and we didn't get a chance to preview the conference championships like I really wanted to go about accomplishing. I was sick, to be honest with you, so you hate to see it, but what I was going to tell you guys was SMU, we had that as a best bet, I believe, and turns out, hey, we actually might be onto something there. SMU being able to prove that, hey, they were the wrong team favored. They beat Tulane convincingly, and they are your American Conference champions, and they might have a little bit of a gripe in terms of who's considered the best group of 5 team in America, according to the College Football Playoff Committee. Again, that is later on down the line, but 16 for 20 other than that, there really isn't much change to report here. Kansas is at number 20, and then you have Oregon State, Texas A&M, and Clemson that are going to be representing that 16 for 18 range. Now, we'll go ahead and jump through to the top 15 now, and we have a little bit more action here in the top 15. We're starting at number 15, the Washington Huskies. They are here. They've won a lot of games ugly, don't get me wrong. So that's why they are down here, even though they are an undefeated team. But they find ways to win, and that was prevalent in that Pac-12 championship game as well. They beat a very good Oregon team who I would still favor on a neutral site over the Washington Huskies, but Washington able to defy expectations. Once again, they are undefeated and they are in the college football playoff. Cannot say the same thing about the Georgia Bulldogs, though. Their 29-game winning streak does come to an end. They will not be able to complete the three-peat, which we said at the very beginning of the season, Georgia was going to have a tall task. Not just that there was a lot of talent that left this team via the NFL draft the last couple of years. But the last time anyone has been able to three-peat was before World War II, and that was with Minnesota. And now that we are expanding into a 12-team playoff, that's going to be a little bit more difficult with the playoff expanding from 4 teams to 12. But Georgia, they did lose in the SEC championship. That's what happened there, and that's why they are outside of our top 10 as well. They fell a little bit, but not significantly by any means. Speaking of that top 10, a team that is right above Georgia is Alabama. We'll talk about that Alabama and Florida State situation in a little bit, but Alabama did win the SEC, so that's why they are ahead of Georgia. And I also want to speak to why I gave that first disclaimer about how I don't make manual adjustments. Because here's the thing. We know about the key injury to Jordan Travis, and Rodemaker is certainly not the same level of dynamic quarterback throwing or running the ball as what Jordan Travis was. However, I think it's almost impossible to really equate to how many points different does that make for Florida State. Like, we know it's a loss for for Florida State not having Jordan Travis out there on the field, but at the same time, how do you equate that into number of points? How much difference does Jordan Travis make to the Florida State offense? I think that's a really difficult question to ask, and I think that's more of a subjective answer, not objective, right? Like, we know it's different. Like, they're not on the same level offensively. So that's why Florida State is at number 7. And again, we're going to talk about that Florida State Alabama thing in a little bit. Notre Dame is at number 6. And then finally, we have our top 5 and what we got going on. Top 5 is virtually the same, but Texas is starting to make a real surge. They are up to number 3. They were up from, I believe it was number 7. No, they were number 6 last week. So in the last couple of weeks, they've went from number 11 all the way up to number 3 in the country. Michigan, we did move them up to number 2. They did cover against Iowa. Oregon lost close, and they lost some points, but we still have them as the number 1 team in the country for now, but they didn't prove it on the field. I do believe that if Oregon was in the college football playoff, they're more than capable of winning a national championship. However, that being said, Oregon did not prove it on the field. They're not in the college football playoff because of that. You hate to see it, but you should have played better in both the regular season matchup and in the Pac-12 championship. It just is what it is. So that is the top 25 from the Any Given Saturday Power Ratings. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section down below. Do you agree with my rankings? Do I have a team too high, too low? Am I too slow? What you guys thinking? Let me know down in the comment section, because I always enjoy some good old discourse on the YouTube channel waves.